from Donald Trump at his State of the Union address. 1 hour, 47 minutes it lasted. Let's face it, most films are too long these days, aren't they? And actually, that would be short for a film these days. But I'm not sure I could manage 1 hour, 47 minutes. One person who's required, because of his job, to watch it all is Freddy Gray, Deputy and US Editor of The Spectator. Good morning to you, Freddy.
Good morning, Julia. Slightly sleep deprived.
Yes. Did you survive the whole thing?
Well, it's hard to focus on it because it just went on so long. And I think Samuel Johnson said of Paradise Lost, nobody wished it had been longer.
But this is the thing. I mean, normally they're around about sort of 45, 55 minutes. They usually don't go over an hour. He always goes on longer. He's getting a little bit, Donald Trump, bit Kim Jong Un, isn't he? And his just sort of, everyone's going to have to listen to me. But of course, a lot of Democrats didn't. There was a lot of people, a lot of Democrats who refused to go to the State of the Union. A lot, refused to stand. We've got a clip of that in just a couple of moments. But it's become so much more of a partisan event than it was under previous presidents, hasn't it?
Well, yes, I think it's a shame that the State of the Union has become this kind of massive set piece in American politics, because in the 19th century, it was just a written letter to Congress that was read out. And even Nixon did that once, I think. But now it's this hugely big event. And when it was sort of, when it grew, it was seen as this moment of unity. And now it's become this sort of moment of division. And Trump is very canny and clever in the way he exploits that. I mean, he did it in his first term, too, in his State of the Union addresses, where he just says something that most of the country will massively agree with and prompt a standing ovation from the Republican side. And the Democrats all sit there looking glum and miserable. And yesterday, the biggest one was when he said, do you think the government of America should put American citizens ahead of illegal immigrants? And of course, the Republican side stood up and the Democrats all sat looking bolshy. And that's just an obvious win for Donald Trump.
But again, they're dumb to do it. I mean, they've shouted out of these. And as you say, this used to be something where, you had these candidates, one was Republican, one was Democrat, but then they were president and they were the president of the whole nation, the head of state. But now it's just seen as another, it's almost like sort of PMQs, party political bashing. Let's have a little watch and a listen just after, Donald Trump telling Congress to stand up if you support Americans over illegal migrants, and they did not stand up. Let's have a little watch and listen of what happened next.
You should be ashamed of yourself not standing up. You should be ashamed of yourself. That is why I'm also asking you to end deadly sanctuary cities that protect the criminals and enact serious penalties for public officials who block the removal of criminal aliens. In many cases, drug lords, murderers all over our country, they're blocking the removal of these people out of our country, and you should be ashamed of yourself.
I mean, a lot of loud heckling there. And for those who couldn't quite hear, but if you were watching, you'd have seen the Democrat Congresswoman Ilhan Omar. She could be seen heckling the president repeatedly, labelling him a murderer. That's an extraordinary state of affairs in a formal situation like that for the State of the Union address.
Yes, and again, it just plays so well into what the story that Trump wants to create, which is that the Democrats are on the side of crime, they're on the side of fraud, they're on the side of illegal immigration. It's perfect theatre for Trump, and that's why he clearly was reveling in it. I do think, however, the speech didn't move things on in quite the way some of his supporters hoped it would. He's still just blaming the Democrats, and that's effective. Yeah. But we're now a year into his administration. I think there's a lot of concern about the economy. There's a lot of concern about foreign policy. He did talk very positively about the economy, but as everybody knows, Americans are not feeling as good about their finances as Donald Trump.
The cost of living is still going up. I mean, that's same as everywhere. It's like even if the rate of inflation's gone down, it's still going up. But it's interesting also, the two policies he's elected on, it's the economy and it was dealing with illegal immigration. He's actually been very successful on the illegal immigration issue, deporting people en masse, closing the border, and yet he's now really unpopular on that policy because of those two shootings by ICE agents, which have really shocked the nation. And again, were clearly unnecessary shootings, I would say, in both cases. But nevertheless, they are as a result of protests supported by the Democrats to basically stop ICE agents doing the job they are paid to do, sanctioned by Congress and with the mandate of the American public too.
Well, and Trump can point towards a positive story related to the deportation strategy, which is that crime in urban areas, yes, it's meant heavy military-style policing in many cities across America, which is not popular, But crime is falling dramatically. Violent crime is falling dramatically.
Sounds good to me. I'll take that on our streets any day of the week.
And that's going to be a big story for Trump as the midterm elections approach in November. I think also very interestingly was the fact he sort of brushed over the Iranian question, which is the big issue at the moment that's concerning the White House, concerning the Joint Chiefs of Staff of the military. He just said he had one line, which was, or the key line was, we want to hear those secret magic words. We will never, ever have the nuclear bomb, and then we will leave Iran alone. Yeah. But I think most analysts think he's parked this huge armada just outside Iran. It's anticipated that he's about to strike them. What will that do? Does he actually want to do it? Are the consequences going to spool out of control? There's lots of interesting questions there, and it's interesting he didn't focus on it.
No, indeed. And we know, of course, that there was, I think, a standing ovation for him saying he will never let Iran get nuclear weapons. And it's the biggest exporter of terrorism in the world, not just in the Middle East. I think most people would agree with that, is how you go about doing it. But he did say he wanted to do it diplomatically. But again, the best way of doing that diplomatically is to have that massive build-up. I mean, it's the biggest build-up of military might by the states since 2003 in the invasion of Iraq. You think the mullahs might take it seriously. But again, you can't negotiate with complete and utter religious lunatics. That's your fundamental problem.
Well, quite. And I think anybody who was thinking that the mullahs will just fold is learning that they're unlikely to fold. So what happens if they don't fold? The consequences could be quite terrifying.
Yeah, indeed. Let's also talk about Lord Mandelson, Peter Mandelson, the former ambassador to the United States, the UK. He was arrested the day before yesterday, released the early hours of yesterday morning. He's put out a statement, basically, via, that usual, slipped in via friends and text messages to them the early hours of yesterday morning, saying, he'd had a planned voluntary meeting to meet with the police in a couple of weeks' time. He's cooperated with all the searches of his homes in London and in Wiltshire. And then out of the blue, the day before yesterday, he's arrested by the police. Now, including his lawyers, misconduct, have got involved to say, it is completely false to claim, as they were told by the police, that they believed that he was a flight risk and that he was planning to move to the British Virgin Islands. And that was why they arrested him. In that case, his passport has been confiscated. A lot of people are very confused by this because the British Virgin Islands, of course, is a British territory and has an extradition clause. So if, and it's a big if, he were going to do that, strange place for him to choose to go. But what do you make of this claim and counterclaim and the decision to arrest him?
Well, we know he likes islands. But
he's been to Little St James, isn't he?
But I think yes, it's a complete mystery really, and it's very, very odd. I think the sort of upshot for it probably is just it's more bad news for Starmer. There's talk in the papers today that this is becoming Starmer's Watergate. It's just going to drip, drip, drip. What did he know about Mandelson's appointment? When did he know it? Why are the files being hidden? These questions are going to keep coming. And Starmer can talk pretty hard against Andrew, the former prince, but he's much more nervous on this, and perhaps with good reason.
Well, indeed. I mean, a lot of people are asking, and it's been brought up in Parliament as well. We've had this searching and arrest of Prince Andrew and now Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor. We've had the search and arrest of Mandelson, and yet we haven't seen any arrests, any investigations, police investigations into anyone implicated in the Epstein files in America. Why is that?
Well, I mean, I'm not often very patriotic, but I do feel actually we do have a bit more of a culture of shaming in our country, which is perhaps eventually. Whereas in America, there's a sort of, there's a sense that the elite is terrible and it's powerful and it controls things. But there's also a sort of acceptance of it that I'm not sure you get in Britain. And you see this with this hostility towards the royal family now. Over this and this hostility for the government over Mandelson, that British people sort of do have that more tabloidy, instinctive, no, they can't get away with that sense, and the police do act.
I mean, I like to think it means that, you know, we come up looking better than the Americans, and that, you know, there is a point when things come out that money and power don't get to talk as well. But again, a lot of people still feel that, you know, there has been a long-standing establishment cover-up, and they fear there will continue to be one. But there's been a lot of talk about the Epstein files in terms of, like, the Telegraph in America exposed these storage units which Epstein had, I think 6 different storage units around America. When his house was first raided, those allegations were first made against him about involving, I mean, numerous dozens of young women who, as girls, had been abused by him, they claimed. They found the house, all his houses, to be, they cleaned up. You know, there were no hard drives, there were no computer files. I mean, you know, clearly, I mean, a man who was a financier who apparently had installed, and that's on record, he had installed video cameras and CCTV in every room in his house. Oh, but there just happens to be nothing on record of any of this. Clearly, there was a cover-up by him. Do you think we're ever going to find any of that information?
I don't know. I sometimes think the Epstein story will just never stop. It will just bubble on forever. I think in America, yes, you're quite right to point out that the public figures have not been arrested in the way or disgraced in the way that they have in Britain. You know, remember that Ghislaine Maxwell is in prison.
Yep.
And she's
a Brit.
But I do think in America, you know, justice is maybe grinding a little bit more slowly, but it will get there. There's certainly the public appetite for it. But I think, you know, the sort of fashionable thing to say now is that the whole Epstein story is a hysteria. It's a kind of bubble and mania.
Yes, I've seen a lot of podcasts saying this, yeah.
A lot of podcasts saying that. And there's an element of truth to that. You know, obviously there's a lot of madness that attaches itself to the story.
And
but
Jeffrey Epstein wasn't Satan. I mean, he was an awful man, and the people around him. But yes, having lunch with him doesn't mean you're a paedophile, you know.
Well, quite. And I mean, but I think the thing that drives the Epstein story is this just fundamental sense that in the 90s and noughties, there was this very rich, very privileged elite that thought they could live by their own rules, and that the people were just completely beneath them. And I think that's that sense of the injustice of it. And the criminality linked to it.
I think they were quite right, and that they could live like that, and they continue to do so. And I don't think anything's changed. I think that is how the elite think.
Well, it is indeed. But some of them are finding out that justice does catch up with them eventually.
Yeah, indeed. Great to talk to you. Thank you very much. Always great to have you on. Freddie Gray, Deputy Editor and US Editor of The Spectator. Covered a lot of ground there. Tom Slater, just on the issue of going back to, you know, we think, you know, the 2 people who've been arrested, not charged, professed innocence to any crime that's alleged against them, Andrew and Mandelson, and then Ghislaine Maxwell, who's 100% guilty as sin and was definitely abused. She wasn't just procuring the girls, she also abused these young women. Back to rights, glad she's in prison, hope she never gets out. Jeffrey Epstein, I mean, killed. I don't think he killed himself. I believe he was murdered in prison, but that, you know, there we are, as most people I think do. But you know, basically this has been, you know, it's only Brits who seem to be getting their collars felt, when there are loads and loads and loads of people who are implicated in the Epstein files who are American. There is that. I also think it's telling that, at least in this current wave, kind of putting Maxwell to one side, this is all about misconduct in public office. It's not about, you know, the kind of broad allegations and swirling rumours about their involvement in alleged sex trafficking. And I think that's part of the problem, is that people have been waiting for a sort of smoking gun on that side, which hasn't really been provided even by these files. So, yes, we have moved quicker over here, but it's because of the fact that they were holders of public office and are suspected to have abused that, not because they've suspected to have abused any young girl or individual. Well, I wonder if anything does charges get brought and anyone does go to trial, whether or not they'd still be eligible for a jury trial, because we've seen the announcement, the reforms, and they urge you push those through, even through the Commons, even before the local elections in May, by the Justice Secretary and Deputy Prime Minister David Lammy. We're going to be talking